Good morning, it's Norma Cowie with Norma Talks. I asked some friends what topic they would like to hear about today, and they said resilience. And resilience was something that I would not probably normally be speaking about, but it makes sense because the majority of us have gone through at least 2 years of having to be resilient, having to change so many things in our lives, having to basically change how we live, how we perceive, how we care for others. For me, I had to change my whole life around in so many ways, and I'm just one person. And so, very often, we don't realize that the inner part of us is drawing upon where we are resilient. Now, because the whole word wasn't something that I have right on tap, I went to my dictionary. And it came up with three different things. And it's a good place to look at. Sometimes the dictionary gives you a different perspective or a different awareness. To me, when I think about resilience, I think of, plowing through whatever is like being a little bit stubborn. But what came out was a little different. Okay, the first thing it said was the power or ability of a material to return to its original form, position, after being bent, compressed, or stretched. And they made the note like electricity. Now, so very often in life, we have situations that come in. So it's not like a material, but we have a situation that come in that we have to change things, which, as I already mentioned, many of us had to do in the last couple of years. And it was like, oh, how do we do that? Because we don't go back actually to a original in lots of ways. We may think that's the goal, but it may not work. But the second one I really liked also. The second definition was the ability of a person to adjust or receive readily from illness, to recover, sorry, was the word recover. Can't read my own writing. Illness, adversity, major life changes, and they have buoyancy. I can personally relate to that a lot because I had a situation many, many, many years ago in my marriage where my then husband had a breakdown that really wasn't handled very well, and left me trying to figure out what on earth to do. How do I handle this? And when I went for help to find out how I could handle it, it was like everyone was kind of saying, well, what are you going on about? Like, as though you're supposed to accept this person falling apart who can't seem to handle anything, couldn't work, was really depressed. And dealing with a depressed person is not easy, believe me. And it just, everything sort of falling apart. But you become resilient. You become, and you work through that. You work through, and I did. Actually, probably was helpful for me who was used to just taking care of everything, to let go and concentrate more on myself at that time. But more about that in a moment. The third thing they said was the ability of a system or organization to respond to or recover readily from a crisis disruptive process, which again explains the situation in my own personal life many, many years ago. Now, we all have situations come up, and very often we have to look at our sense of self and our caregiving. Are we giving of ourselves? Are we taking care of ourselves? Are we looking after who we are or what we are? How does it apply? Do you have a spiritual side of you that supports you, which I luckily did have, but it didn't give me the answers to the psychological issues I was facing with. But it gave me a sense that I needed to dig more into my world in order to be able to, what's the word, survive would be a better word for those times. Busy times when you've got two kids growing up and they're supposed to be like weird. When someone acts weird around you and it affects the people that you care about in your family. I've just got a flood of memories coming in at that time period. And what happens is you're so frustrated because you cannot rely on that person. You cannot rely on things being the same. You cannot rely on anything. And it's like, yes, it's like it says in here, things get bent out of shape, or they get stretched, or the other person cannot adjust to anything. And they might say, oh, yes, I'll do this. And then it's like they go off in some other world and they don't. Now, this is about personal relationships. But in big organizations, the same thing happens. You get a piece of news, you get a piece of information that comes in and blows everything that you've been working for or doing. I think only in retrospect, as I sit here now and think about this word that I was asked to talk about, resilience, I can see in that period of time in my life, I absolutely did not know what was going on. And I know it was becoming more and more difficult. And probably in a way was a result of why a number of years later we actually separated, because it was like trying to talk to a piece of wood. Doesn't work very well. You can love somebody, you can love them immensely, you can want to help them, you want to do everything, but you know what? The bottom line is that each person has to find that resilience within themselves and become aware of themselves and take care of who you are. And I like the sentence, to recover readily from a crisis disruptive process. When your life gets disrupted, it's like you've got to be flexible. So we're going to move into a little different word, flexibility. How flexible are you? Do you know, I mean, I always thought I was very flexible, but I'm not. And because I like things the way I like them and the way they are. And it took me a long time to learn how to be flexible in situations. Excuse me. And then I became too flexible. So where's the fine line in that? Where's the fine line in being over flexible and when you give up everything of yourself to appease, to please, to make good or whatever for other people, whether it's one person or many people? That doesn't work long term. It really doesn't, because literally you run out of energy. You absolutely come dry. It's like a dry riverbed. There's nothing there. And you end up then having to really take a big breath and look after yourself. Flexibility is about knowing who you are and knowing how far you are willing to adjust, able to adjust, but coming back to center. I'm a tennis. I used to play tennis when I was young. And I really hurt myself on the tennis court, which has results today, but that's another story. But I watch a lot of tennis today. And if you ever watch a tennis game, the person who goes over to the one side of the court to hit the ball back comes back to center to go to the other way, or they know that the ball's going to come back. But what they do is you always go back to that central point. Maybe not one, you might have 2 or 3 balls go across the net, but then you'll come back to that more central place. And then they set again. Now, how life deals and copes, how do we deal and cope with things, has a lot to do with resilience. And I think also to our level of flexibility. If we're stubborn, I have been known to be that. If we're stubborn, if we're set, if we want things a certain way and we're not going to compromise, which is another word, especially when it comes to relationships, what happens is things do not work well. Things create. And what do? We have anger, we have depression. And if those of you have heard me speak before, I talk about how anger and like sad mad, I call it, but anger and depression are the same side, 2 different sides, of the same coin. And it's like we do not really relate. One is we blame it all outside, and the other one is we go inside and blame ourselves. And it may not even be a sense of blaming, it's just a sense of we're not coping. We're not coping with what is there. We're not being present. because it's in that moment we need to be present. And in the learning of being present, we become aware. And that's part of our growth, because I think most people at some point or other, and as a psychic reader for over 50, well, 60 years pretty well now, what happens is that you see that most situations come about because we're not sure how to handle it. We're not sure what's going to happen next. We begin to doubt that we have the ability to handle that which is being put down onto us. And what we need to recognize is that we are resilient. We can cope. I have a saying that we're not ever given anything that we can't deal with, but we often just have to let go of some of those parameters, whether that we have a stubbornness or whether we just have an anger or frustration because it's not going the way we want it to, is to be able to move to a different point of view. When I look back today, it's brought up a lot of memories. When I look back, I can see how my own personal growth went through those time periods where I needed to be resilient and maybe wasn't, where I needed to be less stubborn and wasn't. And if less stubborn would mean I would be more flexible. I would comprehend more things. I would understand more things. I would be more aware of things. And that's how I became and finally learned how to be present in the moment, because it's so easy to live in the past or in the future. Oh, it will come this way, or I want it this way, or whatever that may be, or oh, look what happened, and how did that happen, and why did it happen that way? So we end up not being resilient, not being present, not being flexible, and we feel hurt. We end up sad. We end up hurt, thinking and blaming others, whether it be the system, whether it be your mate or your friends or whatever. And always things come back to ourselves. Our personal growth, our awareness, our strengths, our purpose is about us in relation to who we are, what we are, where we're going, how we're going to get there. I'm big on goal setting, yes, but there's many times in my life where I've just gone along and you take whatever. I remember one person in my life said, well, whatever, you can just, whatever comes along, that's fine. And I had to look at that because I was fairly driven about creating what I wanted to create and ensuring that I got maybe where I wanted to go. Didn't always get everything I wanted, but life has been good to me and life has brought me many things. But I did not learn about resilience when I was in my 20s. I did not. Oh, actually, maybe it was more in my 30s when I had to deal with a situation that was bigger than me. And I had to basically let go of and begin to rely on me. I had a person that I thought I could rely on totally. And then all of a sudden, didn't happen overnight, it happened over time. I began to realize I had to count on me. I couldn't count on that person anymore because they didn't have the ability to be accountable. And I look back and today I believe I would have got more help in lots of ways as to how to help, how to be aware. But the one thing it did, it made me become more present. It made me become more flexible, and it made me self-reliant. And that's a word I haven't used here yet today. Becoming self-reliant at the same time, still loving and caring and recognizing a problem is a problem. And we go back to the ability of a system or organization to respond or recover readily from a crisis disruptive process. I think all of us go through disruptive processes. And if you didn't go through any disruptive process in the last 2 years, good for you, because most of us did to some degree. Many people had their whole lives turned inside out. Many people had to make choices they didn't want to make or never even dreamed they would have to make. Many people were despaired and unsure. And even now today, there's still often where you cannot, our lives are not like they were 2 years ago. So yes, resilience. I think human beings are resilient. I really believe that we are resilient. We've survived for how many centuries now? And a lot of centuries are not even on the book. They will be before BC, right? Way back, way back. And I know I've seen too many people in furs, and whether I was reading for them or we were doing past life regressions, I know how long humans have survived. And they have survived because we are resilient. Even if in the moment we are not, we become, because that is part of the process of our growth, of our movement, of our awareness. There is a higher power or another power that, for those of us that may not even be aware of our high selves, that talk to us and support us, there is so much we have that we can reach out. Because I know I had to become aware of me. I had to take care of me and my kids. I had to make sure that things would work no matter what. And at the same time, caring for another who was obviously at that time not able to take care of themselves in an effective way. Made a lot of decisions at that time, which affected our lives, our family lives. And we all survived it. We all came out of it. We all worked the best we could because we had to be flexible. We had to be present. We all had to grow in our own ways and come to our own decisions as to what, when, and where. And love, yes, love is very important in this. But the thing is, we're human. And because we're human, we have emotions that don't always act from the point of view of being, oh, yeah, it'll be all right. I had to learn philosophically many things that supported me through those time periods. I had to learn many things that have supported at that point of time that supported me in many other time periods of my life. This time, very few people get through life without having somewhere they need to become resilient to what's going on and to be able to move forward in such a way where they learn how to care for themselves and care for the ones that they love without demeaning themselves, without giving up all their personal power, but to claim their personal power and their personal space so that they understand that's what life's about. Not always easy, not always fun, but look at the finished product. And the picture comes to my mind of how they tumble stones and make them all beautiful. That's what life is. It tumbles us. It has us look into the deepest secrets within us and to the deepest parts of us. And we come out shiny and bright and moving forward as life has tumbled us. And that's what resilience is. Surviving being tumbled, wrecked apart, unsure, bent out of shape, wondering what on earth's life all about. And then all of a sudden we come out and it's like we're never going back there. We don't go back there. We may go on to new things, but that experience is going to add to you in the next experience where you may be feeling a little set upon, and you need once more to rely on resilience to move you through your life. I trust each one of you has been able to overcome whatever those crises are, because we all have them, and that you have a resilience and knowing that your process is for you to become present and look after you in so many ways. And you will choose which ways those are. I chose the spiritual path. I chose the development path. I chose finding philosophies. And that's what pushed me to learn about communication, about how to respond. And I began to do workshops about being a women workshops, communication workshops, how this all comes together, because I wanted to know more. I wanted to be resilient to the situation. I just wish you well. So enjoy. and bye for now.